Hello and welcome to Campaign Comrades, your favorite leftist gaming podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and I've got Matt and Andrew with me today. How we doing, guys?
Yo. Doing well.
I'm feeling fantastic.
Yeah, today's a good day.
I got to start off at the top, just, apologizing. I am fighting a bit of a cold, so I sound a little stuffy, and if you hear me blowing my nose away from the microphone, I do apologize.
You don't sound bad to me, man.
I'm feeling all right. I'm feeling okay. I took a shower before we started, right. So it got the things flowing. But yeah,
you open the pores, you kind of clear yourself out a little bit.
Yeah. But folks, our wonderful listeners at home, we are now in the thick of our new formatting changes. For those of you who've been listening, probably already aware that we have been changing things up with the new year. This is basically going to be, for the time being, our monthly structure. We do our monthly recap episode of all the major news that happened in the month previous. We do a cool adaptation episode where we just kind of chill and we get to watch some other media and analyze what's going on in various game adaptations. And we may experiment with not just doing movies and TV shows. Matt was bold enough to suggest we even look into novels and stuff like that. And
hey, I'm pushing up my glasses.
I'm pushing up my glasses. I'm putting my pen in my pocket protector. I'm ready to do my part.
Matt just wants some Final Fantasy manga.
You see, you were so close. It was Nier Automata manga.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the real reason he wants to do it. Just wants to see 2B. Yeah.
Or not 2B.
Yeah. But now we are doing our first deep dive into a specific video game or video game series. And for today, being as we're 2 months late basically in terms of when it released, but my other two co-hosts
2 months late for when it released, but we both finished it right in time. So
you two just finished the game this week. But just in time for Ragnarok coming, folks. We are bringing the God of War series. We're going to do a little bit of an overview into the series as a whole, our experience with it, as well as then kind of getting into the more specifics of Ragnarok and all the interesting things surrounding it, digging a little bit deeper into, what we get from the series, both thematically, as well as, what the larger cultural reception to the series has been. Mike screwed up his own schedule, so folks, send him harassing emails and
L's
DMs.
in the chat.
Get into his DMs.
Say he screwed up the scheduling, even though it was right there in the Google Calendar, the group Google Calendar. But he sent us a short little recording of his thoughts. We will put that in shortly. We will just saying it now so I don't forget. But we do apologize, and again, send him harassing emails. He was like an absolute dingus, recorded it on his phone, so you can just get ready for some true leftist audio, folks. Salutes to Matt.
This is where I crack my knuckles and I learn how to be an actual audio editor.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna check in with me later, and I'm going to be like 3 hours deep into
just his segment. Into just his segment.
Just a disclaimer, folks: we are not inciting violence against our comrade, but do send him harassing emails.
Yeah,
maybe AOL Instant Messenger.
But yeah, so. With that out of the way, I say we go right into it. I have an interesting thing here for you guys. I wonder, there's some things that may surprise you here that we all know, since its first game, that the God of War franchise has been, a tentpole property for Sony, right? It's spanned 4 console generations, 1 handheld device, a mobile game, and here's the kicker, a text-based game released through Facebook Messenger.
I did not know of that until you sent the notes. I saw that and was like, oh my God.
Yeah, so we have God of War 1 and 2 on the PS2, eventually ported to the PS3. for the God of War 3 and Ascension.
You missed a very important port there, sir. It also got ported to the PS Vita.
So I guess it's technically 2 handhelds. But we're going from the original releases here. So God of War 3 and Ascension were on PS3. Chains of Olympus and Ghosts of Sparta, the PSP. Betrayal was the Java mobile game. Then we have God of War 2018 on PS4. A Call from the Wilds was a prequel to the 2018 one. That was the thing released on Facebook Messenger. Again, wild to me. It's like who are they marketing that to? It's just boomers. So many boomers playing God of War.
I mean, back when that when was that? That's like 2013-ish, right?
No, this was 2018. This was a prequel. This was a prequel to the 2018 reboot.
Oh, wow.
It follows Atreus. It follows Atreus. It's really weird.
It's hilarious.
I mean, I like text-based narrative little adventure things. That's why I like him. That's why I got the Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers edition, was to do the text-based thing.
Yep.
So we have Call of the Wilds, Facebook Messenger, and then finally we have God of War Ragnarok, the first cross-generational game released on PS4 and PS5. So with that, I want to ask you guys, where and when were you guys first introduced to the series? What games have you played from the series?
Yeah, I've played the 18 God of War reboot and God of War Ragnarok. I always eyed the God of War games previously, but I'm fairly certain they were all mature.
Rated M for mature.
Yeah, and my household was a good Christian place, and we didn't allow those violent ideas here. So I did not get that exposure.
I don't think I got a console until I was like 15 or so. So like, those games were definitely out of my wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah.
Like, both of you know my dad. Like, you'd think that, like, theoretically he would never have cared, would have bought me that stuff. But even Jak 2 at the time was a bit too dark for like what my parents liked in video games. Like they weren't super thrilled when they got me that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, that Jak 2 came with my my PS2 when I got it, and that game I got into it and I was like, oh, this is like Grand Theft Auto, but slightly toned down. Pretty awesome.
When he goes dark mode too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And when Jak goes sicko mode.
Platformer to dark Super Saiyan Jak with a Tommy gun.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, anyways. I always liked beating up the cops in that game.
The Crimson Guard.
Yeah, okay.
We're getting off topic.
Yeah, another series.
For another episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, I was the same boat in the fact that my parents wouldn't allow me to have the original God of War games. So I was introduced on the PS Vita, where I bought the God of War 1 and 2 HD collection. 2 games, 1 cartridge. Love those.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Bring that back. It's a great deal.
That was my way of killing time on the away bus when we were having those long bus trips to the away games. Finished those up. Got a PS Vita TV, the little set top box that I've talked about many a time on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I used that to play God of War 3 and Ascension on PS Now. That was my first real foray into streaming. And I actually found that to be a fairly decent experience overall. I mean, especially for the time. Never played the other handhelds. I looked back through it, never played either Ghost of Sparta or
Chains of Olympus.
Chains of Olympus, there we go. But then it was for me at the time, so flash forward to like 2017, graduated college, got a job. I'm starting to buy gaming stuff again because like I'm starting to dip my toe into having some, free money, to spend on myself. And at the time, all I had was an Xbox. And then E3 came up and that cabin door swung open and walked 2 heavy boot steps and a camera pan up to a bearded version of my beloved Kratos.
Yeah, just coming out of the shadows. That's like I watched a documentary, and just that E3 presentation was ridiculous. People go nuts. Like they're like, who is this fucking kid just skipping around
Yeah.
playing with these hand carved dolls and stuff, and he comes into the house, and then just stepping out of the shadows is Kratos, and people go fucking wild.
Daddy.
Yeah. Daddy. Literally.
And that solidified that I needed to get my hands on a PS4 at some point and play that again, like really invest into the series. And it's something that I think from a broad perspective, they did such a good job maturing the franchise with the last two games.
Yeah. Well,
and like really adapting it, but we'll get into that further.
Yeah, it's one thing I really want to dig into as we get into the episode about where the series started and how it kind of grew with its audience, and how it has changed to the times, and what that means for the overall, what that meant for the overall series. But your points are interesting, Matt. Like my first foray into it was 2018, and I played it late. I played it in like 2020. I've mentioned it on earlier episodes. It was the
year zero AC.
It was the send off swan song for my wheezing and dying. just as they were on a journey to mourn the loss of a loved one, so was I. So I really felt that. I really felt that deeply.
You brought it up to the mountaintop.
Yeah, set it on fire and scattered its ashes.
A just burial.
So that was like my first entrance into the game. But it's interesting how you bring up your experience with the first two games as like your first experience with game streaming, and that has actually been my experience as well. I have recently tried playing the original God of War, the PS3 port, streaming through PS Plus, and it has been my first foray into streaming gaming, and it's been largely okay. Like when it's working, and like I just have a few occasional dips where it freezes and then comes back and says that your internet connection is bad, and then it fixes itself 20 seconds later. But my experience with it has been okay. It's been fine. I can't say that I would. Maybe my experience would be different, or I'd have something else to say about it if I had played it, natively. But so I've played through the majority of the original God of War. But then I've obviously I played, so 2018. I was the first of us to finish Ragnarok. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So I'm basically, so what is it? There's essentially 6 games in the main franchise, because all the other ones are the spin-offs.
Yeah.
Were not handled by Santa Monica. It was basically the first trilogy, Ascension, and then the 2 from the Norse saga are the ones handled by Santa Monica. The other 2 were overseen by Santa Monica, but developed by a studio, Ready at Dawn. They developed the two PSP spin-offs. I forget which company did the mobile game, but it wasn't Santa Monica. And that was literally like a on your flip phone mobile game.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
What are your it's those games, like at first I thought the original games have aged quite poorly, but as soon as I got into it and really felt the combat coming together, you really see the roots that the current series has.
I think
like some of the combos are even the same.
Yeah.
I think part of what makes it feel aged is just that type of gameplay was just a product of what they call the early aughts.
Yes.
That was like, it was the fixed camera hack and slash. It was their way of making sure you didn't get overwhelmed by people behind you that you couldn't see. That was how they handled that for those type of arena slashers like Devil May Cry.
Right. everything I've read into the development about it, it's like that was always one of the things that they said, like, oh, that really held those games back was the technological limitations of who you're able to, or how many enemies you're able to have in any one arena, right? And that was
Yes.
always a major sticking point for them. It's like, oh, this newest game has improved, and that we've got like 25% more foes on screen at any one time. But I gotta say, I hate the original camera. I fucking loathe the original camera. It makes the platforming elements absolutely
God.
impossible.
Yep.
It's
Now imagine
platforming in
doing
that area
that.
is so bad.
Now imagine doing that on a PS Vita, bouncing down the road at like 10 o'clock at night after being up since 6 in the morning and playing a whole football game in between.
I even still, like, I'm glad that the newer games, I think, have gotten, they're not nearly as, there's no real platforming in my opinion.
No, there isn't.
It's hold down button and jump over thing.
Yeah.
No, they've that was one thing that they had to completely rework with the camera change, is that they got rid of any platforming with the over the shoulder third person free roaming camera versus the fixed the fixed camera, which again, it's like, it's so frustrating when you're running through a hallway and, like, you know, holding
and then it changes perspective,
and so you start running backwards.
And then then it changes perspective. Yeah.
No, it's incredibly frustrating. I really do not like that element of it. But the combat itself was actually, you know, it's slower. It is slower.
Yes.
Which,
Product
you know,
of the hardware as well.
Yeah, understandable. But like once you actually started getting into the flow of things, it was actually really fun. Challenging too. I mean, I hit a couple skill barriers that took me a while to break through.
I mean, a
with
lot of
some
those
good
old hack and
upgrades.
slash games, they are still fun, even if like the cameras are a little janky and like they show their age a bit. Like old Devil May Cry, and the one that really blatantly goes after God of War, which Dante's Inferno, which is
Yes.
God of War in old Christianity. Which
Have
is
you ever
actually
played
fun.
those?
I played Dante's Inferno. It's a really fun game.
I always remember seeing it, but no, I never played it.
Yeah.
I also played that one on PS Now.
I found myself constantly surprised how smart the mini boss AI was in the early game. You know, your regular mobs, you know, are nothing special. You figure out the trick to beat them, and it's pretty straightforward. But like things like the ogres and stuff, like, you know, you dot, like you see them telegraphing their hit, and you dodge one way and they move, and they actually move with you, and will strike right where you land. Which was like, I gotta admit, I was both impressed, and it was like it went against my expectations. Like, I'm playing this with the expectation that this game is not going to be capable of doing that type of stuff, that my modern gamer skills are going to be able to overpower this this gameplay. But that was a bit of a check to my ego there. But I found it enjoyable. I've got some other complaints about it, narratively speaking, that I don't particularly care for, that we'll get into at the end, I think, in comparison to the others. But there are a couple things I wanted to bring up about the.
I assume you mean the quick time event with Aphrodite.
Not that one. I hadn't gotten there. There are some of those bits at the end, but no, that I don't know if that's even in the game that I played.
That might be in the second game.
I think so. I'm pretty sure most of those things came in the second one and after. But no, it's just some general things. Like, it's mainly about Kratos's characterization that I find I don't like in the first one.
Interesting. Yeah, that I have some questions around some of that. So, but I'll leave that till we get to the end.
We should make our pause here to make sure we let Mike.
All right. Yeah, I almost just went right ahead. So
that's why
thank you for the reminder.
as the editor.
So thank you for the reminder. So here, without further ado, we will get Mike's thoughts and his impressions and his experience with the franchise as well. Take it away, Mike.
I fucked up the dates and will be missing the recording of this beautiful episode that the boys will be doing on God of War. And then unfortunately, as I'm not a Sony pony like the rest of us, I was unable to play Ragnarok before we get to speak about it. So my only reference is God of War 2018, which I'm sure the boys will be touching on at some point at this pod. But I figured I'd drop in some of my thoughts before we dive into what Matt, Ben, and Andrew have to say about this very formative series, especially in the next gen or this award-winning series in the next gen consoles. So obviously love bossing boy around, shooting the arrows. Always a fan of an arrow in the game. Wish that more games allowed your actual character the use of arrows. But always enjoyed the combat. This was my second playthrough of 2018. I had played on Andrew's PS4 in 2018 when it came out and had beaten it then. But I have to say, even the second time around, the story is just absolutely incredible. Even the twist at the end, I had kind of forgotten. But always happy to see that twist, and can't wait to see how it plays out in Ragnarok. Hopefully it won't take 5 years to port that to PC, so I'll be able to do that before then. But overall, one of my favorite series. Can't wait to be able to experience Ragnarok. Largely the story, and we know that I'm not a story head like Ben. I like to button mash through, but even if I could, I wouldn't want to during this story. The voice acting is fucking incredible. The story itself is compelling. Makes you actually want to listen. The cutscenes are never too long that you want to just get to the gameplay, and they're cinematic in a way that fits well with the game. That it's not over the top so much as to take you out of like what the actual gameplay is. Like I said, excited to play Ragnarok and excited to hear what the guys have to say about the game and their experiencing playing it. So I hope you enjoy their conversation, and forgive me for fucking up the schedule.
All right, we're back. Thank you for that. We can, I think, move on from this bit. We all have, a varying level of experience with the franchise. Matt, obviously, as the true gamer amongst us, has the most experience with the series.
I've played all of the mainline games.
Yeah, which none of the rest of us can cop to, but I've at least played some of the originals, so I do have this kind of perspective on the two basically different versions of the series, the two iterations, the two eras of the games, the sagas, as you will.
As you would.
But yeah, I just wanted like this bring up a couple points about the trends within the development of the series that I found interesting. So obviously the first one began with the 2005 release of the original God of War. But as we said, Sony developed the two sequels and the prequel Ascension. That Ascension was the last of the Greek saga that we got.
Yes.
But those
also the weakest of the Greek saga.
Yeah, those main games ended on a cliffhanger, and the series went dormant for a while. Ready at Dawn develops the two PSP spin-offs, which are largely considered to be some of the best
They're
PSP
some of the
games
best PSP
ever.
games out there.
Yeah. You always hear it's like that one, Daxter,
Ratchet and Clank Size Matters.
There's another one. Oh, Crisis Core.
Agent Clank.
Crisis Core
are largely thought of as basically the best PSP games they had. Which is interesting. I did have the PSP. I did not play either of those two. I don't know how I really missed those, because I probably at that point I could have got them myself and snuck around any draconian family standards that were enforced in my household growing up. So then this one is the one that's most interesting to me. There is an overall series trend in both sagas, and even including the spin-off games, where each game has had a new director for each subsequent game. And like I just like am wondering what this says about what it takes to make these games. And for the most part, I think it doesn't say things very good. Right. I mean, there is the fact that it's interesting, and it is often good to have different voices and different views and styles bring in. It keeps games from getting stale. But in terms of what it takes out of the people who make them and what those people do to the people who work below them, it raises some red flags to me.
Yeah, totally fair.
But yeah, I'm like still I consider myself basically ignorant of most of the original series. Matt, did you have any insight into the development of the original games?
When the original games came out, I was too young to care. And when I got into them, I wasn't really paying attention beyond the face value of I was, getting something to entertain myself on a bus ride to eat up a large portion of my time that was being spent typically watching Lethal Weapon, because it was the only movie that was approved for like 2 years.
Hilarious. All right, so then we have our second saga here. The Norse saga got the soft reboot in 2018. It was seen as a huge departure, I think rightfully so, and was met by an optimistic skepticism, I would say. That weird kind of, people were like, oh, I'm excited for more God of War. Kratos looks sick. Gameplay looks good. But they were like, they didn't know that, like, is this the character that I know? And like those who...
Where are the blades?
Yeah. Yes.
So, there was a whole bunch of shit going on. And within the studio, it was constantly seen as this was a huge risk that they were taking. And it seemed to pay off, though, because it became one of the highest selling PS4 games ever. Won
even late
all
in the cycle too.
Right. It won all the Game of the Year awards.
It's got other accolades such as like fastest game to reach overwhelmingly positive on Steam.
Yeah, with the PC port. Yeah, the PC port was probably one of the best. Is the best received Sony port onto PC. Yeah, so you're right. It continues to impress, even essentially 5 years after its 4 or 5 years after its original release. So but it was a huge success. It revitalized the studio. If it had failed, Sony Santa Monica was done for. They were toast. Basically,
what a loss that would have been. Jeez.
And so then now we come to the most recent release of Ragnarok, brings an end to the Norse saga. So the studio heads have talked about openly that they didn't want to spend another 5 years making a third game, but which it leads to because each one of these two had taken them 5 years. So they're like, oh, it would have taken 15 to do the whole trilogy, but which basically infers that, or you can infer that it was meant to be a trilogy.
Yeah.
That they basically had to cut down on the story in order to fit and bring up and wrap an ending into a second game. But without getting into the actual plot of Ragnarok, how do you guys think that affected the story in large terms? Do you think that was a smart decision? Do you think they sold themselves short here? What do you think?
I thought 2 games was fine.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I was happy with the narrative arc over these two installments. I think, I could see them having stretched this to 3, but I think a lot of the weight would have been lost had they done so. I think keeping it tighter really provided a more emotional hit than maybe spreading it out over another installment would have.
That's why I don't think they could have made it 3. Just because I don't think the way, like, it's very hard to, because like the 3rd would have to then be your Ragnarok. So what do you do in between the two that can suffice to be its own slice of game, like narratively, and then not have the payoff be Ragnarok at the end and
I
leave
mean,
you with
I guess what it would be is like you don't do the time as big a time jump.
Yeah.
It's just surviving Fimbulwinter, and you do something else there. Like maybe you focus on Thor as the real big bad of that one, and then so my point is I think you are correct, Andrew, that for our protagonists, for Kratos and Atreus, and a lot of parts like Freya as
Yeah.
well, it would have dragged in a way that could have, stalling things, the momentum like that could have had some serious narrative implications and not any good. The one place where I think, however, that it could have benefited, or the ones who could have benefited the most, I think, are the villains. I think Odin in
Yes.
particular could have benefited more from having more build-up. I think that
well, I mean, with
just
the benefit of
dropping.
hindsight, Odin was in a lot more scenes than you realize.
Sure. Spoiler.
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, I know, but spoiler still. Be careful, folks. There be spoilers here. But we'll put in a warning when the actual talk about Ragnarok comes up, because
I was very deliberate with my word choice there.
But now people are going to be looking for it.
Will
But
they?
I don't know. I just I feel like we could have gotten more development of the motivations behind the Aesir, behind the gods themselves.
Yeah, I think that is the one area where a potential additional game would have helped. You're spot on with that, from my opinion.
I mean, you can see it in the gameplay split just by spoilers again, with how that story is typically brought out and how that's discussed, and what you're doing at that exact moment. It does handle in a way where it almost felt like that could have been a spin-off in between.
Yeah, folks. If you care enough, we're going to put a spoiler warning in here, and if Matt is willing to put in, cares enough for your delicate ears to put in a another note about when we pick up around it. But I do want to mention it now. People were talking about how okay, so here is the actual spoiler. So check yourself. The people were talking about, oh, we should get if there was another game, it would be just an Atreus only game, but that could only be spin-off.
Yeah.
That's not a mainline. That's not a mainline game. But with the ending, people are like, Atreus is going off on his own, so let's follow him in another game. And I'm like, sure, for a spin-off, absolutely, but not as a mainline game. Nobody's going to buy into that.
If I could interject if they do a spin-off game, who I want the bad guy or the antagonist to be?
Yeah.
Sindri.
Yes.
It makes
that's
the most sense.
Totally what I felt like was.
And have the overarching thing be trying to like forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Norse one follows like be better. It's like the constant constant theme throughout.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, we're done with spoiler territory for now. We're back into the
closing Pandora's box.
Yeah, we'll reopen it later. But yeah, so that, like, I don't know, that's, I think, an interesting question I have is like, could they have done this in 3? How would they have changed things if they had? I mean, yeah, I think there's a good point to be made that like how they ended the first one doesn't give you a whole lot of room. I guess it's mainly the time jump that limits you there. If you don't do the time jump, yeah, you have a little bit more freedom, but then Fimbulwinter could be a little boring.
Yeah, that's
well, especially because the idea that like you wouldn't be able to realm travel, you'd be trapped in Midgard.
Right. That's a significant point. And like that's a big part of the game, right? Is it's not an open world game, but it's open realms. It is an open zone type of thing. You have the different areas. I hate that we're using that term now. Thank you, Team Sonic, for putting that into my brain.
They got you.
But it does fit more than I would like to admit.
It does. No, I think I think that's the only place you could fit in another installment, and I don't know. I feel like that would drag. There's just only.
I just feel like 2 is like succinct, and you get what you need out of it, and you don't need to stretch something unnecessarily just to get 3.
Yeah.
Right, and I appreciate that. I mean, when they're respecting us both as consumers and as still consuming, but like as they're appreciating us or respecting us narratively, right? They're not padding it out with useless fluff,
Right.
Yeah,
and
there's no useless fluff in these games.
With Ragnarok, you could maybe say that the crater is kind of odd, because it's a huge area that comes right at the end that like becomes a pacing problem.
It was fun.
So did I.
Run around and explore and kill dragoons.
I think the biggest thing was a pacing issue. It's like it happens right at the end, and it's this huge area that just stalls.
Yeah, I kind of liked that though. It gave me something to do before it was like, okay, now it's time to just finish the story,
because you didn't want it to end. But yeah, so I think here's a good transition, with like how clean and concise and effective the plot of the Norse saga is. It's interesting then to look at the absolute craziness of the plot of the original Greek saga, the intricate layers, the time travel,
my favorite part,
the timeline is insane.
They constantly reference it in the Norse saga,
and they do so more in 2018 than they do.
Yes, but I really do enjoy when Mir asks questions about that.
Right. Yes. Did you guys catch the thing of Mimir asking about I once heard you engaged in a fight with like a rock star, a musician, or whatever. It's the Battle Rumble thing, and it's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. PlayStation Battle All Stars or whatever.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yes, that was a really good.
Yeah, that was a good
Easter egg.
But I heard you went back in time to fight the fates.
But yeah, man, the plot of the Greek saga is so fucking convoluted. And it's like, for me, as I'm like trying to piece it together, a lot of it has to do with how they release these games. Like Chains of Olympus, Ghosts of Sparta, Ascension are all prequels, all happened before the first God of War, but all of them are talking about and like develop the motivation behind what is Kratos doing in that first game. Why is he a servant to the gods? Why does he hate Ares? All that type of shit. And it's just like so much to try to keep in your head at once. It's nuts. I don't even think we'll go into a full on discussion about the full plots of these games, because we'd be here for an hour just going through all of them. I've got like 2 pages that
we need to have a 4-hour essay here where we discuss all of the inaccuracies that they've portrayed, all of the double speak where they say one thing in one game and they do a different thing in a different game.
Yeah, it's nuts. So I'll just give a quick summary of the Greek saga, and you and Matt mainly being the one to feel free to interject, and Andrew, if you have got any questions or any confusions, let me know.
Yeah.
So in total, the Greek saga surrounds Kratos' journey seeking revenge on the gods for using him as their tool to fight all their wars for them. The series basically revolves around Zeus's prohibition on the gods being able to wage war against each other, so they must use mortal champions instead. Kratos became the champion of Ares, the original god of war. Ares sought the creation of the perfect warrior to, overthrow Zeus and take control of Olympus for himself. So this is like all, which leads to the bit of Kratos' backstory, which gets like flashbacks in the mainline games, but then is fleshed out in the prequels in the PSP games that that Ares tricks Kratos into killing his own family, and he like basically after he's done it, Ares appears to him and is like, this was meant to, sever all worldly connections and attachments to make you into the perfect warrior. And Kratos, like, who was basically up until then the perfect warrior, a mindless, brutal killing machine. Basically that was like, oh no, you fucked up. He snaps out of it. He like cradles the corpses of his wife and daughter who he just killed. And then an oracle who had warned him about this, knew he had basically said, bitch, please, curses him and binds the ashes, because like their bodies are lit on fire because they've torched the entire settlement. And so like their bodies burn, and she curses him to wear the ashes.
Their ashes.
So he becomes the ghost of Sparta, and the Ashen One, as he's often referred to. And that's why he's got the white. Yeah, it's like originally he's got that, he's got that olive tone skin, he's got the Mediterranean tan to start with. But then there's also other previous shit about like it starts with like the real story starts with Ares and Athena go to, because Zeus heard a prophecy from the fates or whatever that he would be killed by his son or by somebody bearing these marks, and so they go and they find the Spartan village, and Kratos' brother Deimos has the birthmark. They try to, he tries to stop them. They take Deimos away. Kratos gets pissed and tattoos himself in remembrance, thinking that he's been killed. So like he becomes the one that the prophecy is about, that a marked one will kill Zeus. But it's like, again, it's all complicated. It's all really convoluted. But so eventually in the first game, spoilers again, but
for a 18-year-old game.
Yeah. So Kratos eventually kills Ares at the end of the first game and becomes the titular god of war.
That's where we end.
Yeah, he goes around then, like he's got all the power that he could want. He's still unhappy. He's just, fucking shit up just as the god of war, killing everybody that he wants to. He's the
gods are unhappy.
Yeah, the gods are pissed at him. He's just, brooding on his throne of skulls. Skulls for the skull throne type of shit. But yeah, Zeus,
he had a harem too. Don't forget the harem.
Never forget the harem. Zeus betrays him by taking away his power. It's
a really cool opening level in the game.
It's
one of my
favorite opening levels. Yeah, Zeus nerfs Kratos.
He gives you the sword of Olympus to fight the Colossus of Rhodes. These are words that I'm saying.
Cool.
And then he comes down and takes all your power.
See, Rhodes was a place, not like the thing. Not the. It's like Rhodes.
Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah.
Big statue.
So it's like you're pissed at Zeus, and the other two games then revolve around you taking it to Olympus. So he just goes on this rampage for the next two games of the main games, killing all the Olympians, both in Olympus, the underworld. He kills some Titans. He allies with some Titans. But he eventually kills them too. Eventually he destroys Olympus. But he decides to kill himself rather than continue to serve as a pawn of the gods, because he had killed Athena pretty early on, but she's like still manipulating him
too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she's like still manipulating him beyond the grave. She like claims to be some type of like higher life form. And so she like wants him to like, take control, and he's like, fuck this, impales himself with the sword. And that's where the main series ends. That's the major cliffhanger. We don't see from him again until we get to it's like hundreds of years later, or 100 years later. And with the opening of the Norse saga, Kratos now has the scar on his abdomen from where he impaled himself.
I think
there's so much going on in these games.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting. It tracks with kind of the larger themes we've seen in the media landscape, where like these earlier games were the and maybe this is wrong, but from my perspective, these earlier games, the production process started with let's make a cool hack and slash, and then we'll worry about the story. Like we're not yet at the time where everything is this interconnected narrative universe.
And they're not even they're taking the Greek mythology coat of paint very lightly.
Yep.
Like they're very liberal with their use of actual Greek myth versus.
Oh, this is an interesting point that I'll bring back. The original series creator and game director of the first game, David Jaffe. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
Yes, proper.
David Jaffe, claimed inspiration from two things: the Japanese game Onimusha, a game where you use or that makes use of historic figures that shaped Japan's history, retelling their stories with supernatural elements. Sound familiar?
Oh.
But he was also then inspired by the 1981 film Clash of the Titans. So he wanted to do Onimusha, but with Greek mythology.
Love it.
Which is why he has the Kraken in there, which typically is not Greek mythology. It's
Norse mythology.
It is.
It's the tale of Theseus.
I think so.
Perseus. I think it's Perseus.
I don't think it's ever referred to as a Kraken.
Because Perseus is the one who kills the Medusa, and that's how I believe
Perseus. That Kraken is a deliberately Norse mythos name for the creature.
It's interesting. It's cool to see that inspiration. But these games are wild. Like, which is the one where he does go back in time? I forget. Is that one of the spin-offs, or that's two?
It's God of War 2.
Because he gets killed by Zeus, right? Isn't that what it is?
So he has to go back in time before Zeus killed him, and you start the fight with your full power because Zeus doesn't get to drain you.
Got him.
You do some whole time bullshit with the fates. It's actually they're very fun.
So, that then leads us to the Norse saga, which we're all familiar with, right? It opens up, we realize that, Kratos has mellowed a bit. He has, but still is cold and distant and conflicted inside, which actually is a departure from before. I don't think he was ever conflicted beforehand.
Pretty hard to be conflicted when the gods have made you murder your wife and child and be a weapon for their destruction.
So he's grappling with his own past, and will grapple with the past of the franchise in a bit, but he's ended up in Midgard, the Norse realm, and we find out that he's married a woman named Faye, and they've had a son, Atreus, who in the opening of the game he is like estranged with. So that's an interesting point that I remember thinking, oh, is that a plot hole? Like, what's going on here? Because it's like he met Faye, they had a kid, but then it's like he was never part of Atreus's life until she got sick and passed away. Like, it's like, where was he because they don't really know each other very much at the beginning of 2018. Do you remember if that gets talked about?
Traditionally speaking, isn't that how Spartans treated their children? Essentially, they would not raise them; they would send them to the army.
They went into be trained and shit. But as
because I think he's discussed it before, where a lot of his how he was raising Atreus was raising him like a Spartan.
Yeah, that's definitely brought up.
I was led to believe that it was basically that if we take that it's not a retcon from the flashbacks of Ragnarok, is that he didn't want Atreus raised as a Spartan was. He didn't want him raised the way that he was. And that is a reason why he removed himself, is that he would be afraid that he would impart too much of the generational trauma of growing up a Spartan onto him. That's how I read it.
I read it more that he just didn't want to imbue his own rage and past.
Right, exactly. No, exactly.
And
that's what I'm saying.
That's not necessarily bred from the Spartan way. That was bred from.
They said something. He does say something about that in Ragnarok. He's like, I never wanted you to grow up like I did. He says something because Atreus is like, oh, you didn't think I could handle it, and he said something like, I didn't want you to.
Yeah.
I would have never wanted you to. He says something explicitly like that, and so I don't know if that was a retcon. But yeah, so it's like they're estranged at the beginning of 2018. We find out, that his wife, Atreus' mother, Faye, has died, and the game begins with them, doing, burning her
Building her
body
funeral
on the pyre. That sets all the things in motion. And we find out later on that Faye, as one of the Jotnar, had seen in the future and knew that the journey that they would be undertaking together. But in cutting down the tree and stuff, they break the protective barrier, and who shows up but the Aesir god Balder, who has been sent to find the last.
Don't you mean
giant.
the stranger?
Which I didn't put this all together until actually seeing it stuff. It's really interesting about and they did a really good job in Ragnarok in really kind of fleshing out this whole story. It's Balder is looking for Faye.
Yes.
And he doesn't know that, because it's he's heard story of the last giant fighting Thor, carrying the great axe. So it's when he shows up, if you go back and look at the footage, he's he thinks Kratos is the giant. He's smaller than I expected. But it's basically, why I'm here. I'm here for you, the last giant. To prevent Ragnarok. I need to kill you.
That's the Faye Thor part is a fun part of the creator.
Exactly. It's learning that story is that of their fight in Vanaheim. So yeah, that's it all ties in together. So you fight them, you travel the 9 realms, because her dying wish was scatter my ashes at the tallest peak. A very simple story point that then blossoms into this larger thing. I was always a criticism of mine from 2018 is yeah, this is a strong narrative game, but the premise seemed weak to me. But it is interesting in its simplicity.
Premise is strong just based on what it means to the characters more than anything else.
Right. No, I think I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's sent to Balder had been sent by Odin to prevent Ragnarok by taking out the last giant. They meet Freya, that is, don't know at first that she's a goddess.
The witch.
She's one of the Vanir. So in these games, they combine the two Norse goddesses of Freya and Frigg together. Freya is not normally the wife of Odin.
Mm-hmm.
Frigg is.
They freely interchange those names.
Yeah, it's almost like
who's
it's
saying it.
Well, that's a pet name.
Yeah,
is how they get to it. But yeah, so you realize that that she is Balder's mother. She had protected him, casting this spell on him to make him invulnerable to pain and harm, and all this, with one exception being mistletoe. The dwarves had given Atreus, had given Boy the mistletoe arrows that eventually is what allows him to be vulnerable. And when Balder tries to kill Freya at the end, Kratos steps in and is claiming to break the cycle of violence. It's interesting, and it's something that I want to get into. It's that the argument that they get into is it's time to break the cycle of violence. It's time to be better, but it's the only way to do it is through more killing.
So the cycle of violence in particular pertains, from his perspective, to children killing their parents.
Yeah.
Because he killed Zeus, which is his father.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
He doesn't want Atreus to follow suit and kill him. He doesn't want Balder to kill his mother. He wants children to stop killing their parents.
So Cory Barlog, the Balrog of Morgoth himself, has said that the original Greek saga was a story of is a father and son, but so is the Norse saga, but the son has become the father, type of thing. Following his own psychology, right? Basically, yeah, gotta dig deep into the man's psyche there about writing a game about killing his dad. but then to realize, oh yeah, no, I'm a dad myself now. Please don't kill me, child.
Please don't.
Don't repeat my mistakes. But so killing Baldur brings on Fimbulwinter, the 3-year winter that will precede Ragnarok. They complete their journey. We find out that Faye is the giant who had foreseen the future, and that Atreus is actually the Jotnar named Loki.
Dun dun dun.
We get our time jump, and here we are into Ragnarok.
This is where we will drop another spoiler warning.
Yes, folks. Maybe you can. I mean, there may be some final bits at the very end when we're kind of reckoning with the series as a whole, but for the most part, I think we will have a part that you can jump back into. So, Matt, if you are able to put a timestamp in post production to give you the warning. So here you are. Spoilers for God of War Ragnarok. Here is your last warning. Dun dun dun.
What's going on, guys? It's your editor, Matt, here, coming to tell you that there's spoilers for God of War Ragnarok ahead. If you want to avoid those, you should fast forward about 22 minutes to about an hour and 17 minutes into the podcast, and you will avoid pretty much everything. Thanks, and here we go.
Okay, so we warned everybody about spoilers. I just want to open it up to you guys. What were your thoughts about Ragnarok? And you can talk about anything, gameplay, story, any of that. What do you got? Say Matt just platinumed the game last night.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go first. I'll let Matt share his thoughts. But I really thought that the story of Ragnarok really brought the North saga to a really nice, cohesive kind of circle, completing it in a way I really appreciated. I thought the gameplay was, obviously fantastic. Picked up right where the God of War from 2018 was, and has some improvements. Personally, love the drop near spear.
I grew to like it. Yeah.
When you fully upgrade that thing is sick.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I really thought this was a great continuation of the story they started. Really didn't miss. I had minor complaints here and there. I think, Ben, you do make a good point earlier with the fact that maybe a little bit of fleshing out on Odin's motives and making him feel a little bit more like a big bad, as opposed to, because I mean, a lot of the motivating factors behind taking Odin out and why he's such a big bad is referential, and in a lot of things we don't actually see in either of these games.
The game even covers that a bit in the moment when Loki is running around in Helheim with Thrud, and she brings up the fact that like all the stuff that he says that Odin has done is spoken to him by his traitorous ex-wife and his former
advisor. Yeah.
And
that all the stuff that Atreus is getting and that he's trying to prove to her that why her family is so bad is all secondhand shit, And
I think it's something that I think it's interesting characterization about Odin. That the way they're showing it to us right now is he's this doddering old man, who's just, on his quest for knowledge, and all he wants is peace. He doesn't want war.
So like he's just like us. He wants to know what's next.
Yeah. And
it is a very, for a god, it is a very human desire.
Yes.
Right.
But the thing we find at the end is that he is just as bad as all of those stories have told us. He is willing to do all of those horrible things that he's done. And it's shown to us at the end with how he handles, the final beat of the game, like how it leads up to that. Like
we don't need to tiptoe around it. We've done our spoiler warning. No, he's the big twist of the game. He has been Tyr all along. He's infiltrated them. He's learning all their secrets. He's being wily like Odin was, and eventually, Brock being kind of a more down to earth, when he picks up on it and he kills him, and that then is what really becomes the motivation.
And he uses the threat of his death as a means of escape. Like, you need to Frigg, you need to go like take care of him. Like, if you don't take care of him, he'll die.
Yeah.
It's so that like that's where you get that, but and then it comes fully into view when he like kills Thor.
Kills
That he's
Thor,
like
yeah.
that, like, you know, you and Thor have like struggled through this, you know, come to an understanding. You think, you know, that he's going
As
to walk away,
fathers.
that you say that he has come to terms with his own trauma and his own dealing with his father, and is going to finally, you know, stand up for himself and you know, not just cower in his father's shadow. Thor or Odin kills him for it.
And I think
Uh,
Thor's fear of Odin is also another of the subtle characterizations that shows like Odin's clearly capable of fucking shit up.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
He knows every
Thor is
kind of
not
magic.
adverse to throwing his weight around.
Yeah, the best, one of the best Thor bits is when when Atreus first gets to Asgard, and you know, you got Heimdall, you know, like as Matt, you say, you know, the most punchable face, and you know, he can read everything, and he's like, you know, picking on Atreus, and Thor steps in, not out of any, you know, protectiveness of Atreus, but just to basically be like, you know, he's doing what his dad wants. Dad wants Atreus unharmed and all this, and it's basically just like, what are you going to do to stop me? And he just like towers over Heimdall, is like, look into my eyes, you tell me. And it's just, he looks at it and it's like, you're a sick man. He was going to sodomize him with the hammer.
Oh, absolutely.
I really enjoy the Thor character in both of these installments.
Ryan Hurst does a good job.
Yeah.
Did a real good job.
He's great, and the model's
Andrew,
great.
When you beat the game, did you go to Alfheim after the fact?
I'm in Alfheim. I didn't complete the next what's her name? The head of the Valkyrie stuff yet.
Well, she's not there.
No,
but you need to just explore a little bit of Alfheim.
Okay.
Go to the shop in between the barons and
yeah,
where you would the first Mystic Gate.
It's basically the very middle of Alfheim. It's smack dab, the shop right in the middle.
Got it.
But yeah, we won't spoil that for Andrew.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I was testing the water.
It's a little bit,
cute.
but yeah,
it's fun.
It's cute. Yeah.
But
I
really,
no, sorry,
the game ended in it definitely was surprising to me. I fully was expecting Kratos to die. I don't know if either of you were, but I did think he was going to in some way perish resolve.
There was something a developer said somewhere, and I forget where it is now. Oh man, I thought I had this noted somewhere, that there's at one point in the final battle, I think it's to a point that I want to bring up at the end, that again brings the main theme that Matt has already correctly identified. But it's like when he makes this one choice, it's like that's where his destiny changes. It was like he was going to die. But then things change. But then it's like you get this is a clever little bit that it's like the prophecy still plays out. It's just slightly different. I forget again. I should have written this down as well, because I saw it too long ago. But it's like if you like looked at the image of you know, it's like on those the Jotnar shrine boards, you know, it's boy holding Kratos, and it's like something it's like it's got a scar over one eye or something like that, and like, you know, it's cradling the father with, you know, like one eye, like that, and it's basically
and he was holding Odin.
You think it's Kratos, and it's when Odin dies, when Atreus removes his soul, it is the exact same thing. It's the All Father, and he has one eye, and you know, so it's like prophecy is not always as clear cut as that. So it's like the prophecy still did come true, but in just not in the expected way, which I think is interesting. And yeah, I don't know. I felt like it was. I don't know that they could have gotten the theme to land if Kratos dies. I don't know that because it's basically, again, the whole idea of, be better, if he, he does choose to be better and changes, deciding from, that we're seeking vengeance instead to seeking justice. And
That's
then
a big theme of the Berserker fights.
yeah, but then I guess it's like it would maybe hit to be more real that, like, you're not always rewarded for, and most often you're not rewarded for seeking justice. The world is an unjust place. Even in this fantasy, so it may be, in a way, I do think it's a little too clean. It's a little too neat to have him survive like that. It's when taking the character of Kratos as a whole, to see that, like, because Odin in the final battle says things like that, like, what kind of god are you? You've never felt the love of people who worship you. Like, you're no real god. You don't know that kind of power. To then see that is what the future holds for Kratos, is that, like, he will become the god of these lands, that he is going to, and that's what you do in post game, right?
Yes.
Is you go and you make the realms safe once more, and the people love you for it. And so in terms of the overall character, that's satisfying, but I think it undercuts it a little bit to have him survive. Granted, though, the series is too popular. They're not going to kill Kratos. Like, come on. I never for once thought that he was going to die.
Interesting. Okay.
Never ever thought that was going to happen. I'm too capitalist pilled. I know how these things work. I know how marketing works. They're not going to make another God of War mainline game following Atreus. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I was also going to bring up the fact that, like, historically speaking, killing Kratos doesn't kill him.
Yeah, so, he just comes back more pissed.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe they just skipped that this time. Like, if we're gonna make another game, it's probably just best if we just leave him alive, so that we don't have to be like, oh yes, he killed himself, but the hands of fate had different plans for him.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's kind of what I was expecting that to kind of be the beat. Obviously, from
I was actually a little caught off guard by how I found far from the end the Heimdall fight was. I was expecting that to be more right up to the duel with Odin. I was caught off guard by how quickly it came up on me.
I thought it was kind of that fit for my gameplay.
It was also really satisfying to throw a whole bunch of spears at the ground and to watch him
walk right into it,
continuously stunned by it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a fun fight.
It is very satisfying when you finally land that first hit.
Oh yeah.
What would you guys say is the best fight of the game?
I'll let you go first, Andrew, unless you have to think on it.
Go ahead if you have one in mind. The Heimdall one's up there for me. I did enjoy that a lot.
The Heimdall fight is enjoyable. I'd say best means two different things to me. I think the most challenging and rewarding fight is Na at the end. I think that's a good final culmination of everything. I found that better
for the one addition for me. Why I agree with you is her two runic attacks that you have to switch through the arrows, like when she does the fire thing, that you got to switch
the
to
soundstone and the fire buildup.
Yeah, those are cool. Like, it made me.
It makes
feel
you not
good
span your arrows so that you always have one on hand to.
Yeah, I never span the arrows. The only thing I would use whenever it was available is the runic summon. It's like, because that was just a guaranteed stun. So, or at the very least an interrupt.
And the reward for that fight is some cool drip for Freya.
Yes,
I haven't brought up yet, but Andrew, if I haven't said this to you directly, I've said it to Ben. I'm heavily shipping Freya and Kratos. Throughout this game,
absolutely.
Their partnership is like too on the nose at times. There are definite points where they're like doing a little like talking back and forth, and she's like, some people just want to settle down and have a family. He just grunts.
Yeah, he just
like, oh.
Totally.
Confirmed asexual Kratos.
Yeah. But I call them Fratos.
Fratos. Yeah, I mean, I think I really liked the Heimdall fight. I enjoyed the Thor fight at the end and kind of
Did
how
you like
that
the
all
part in
played
the
out.
first Thor fight when he brings you back?
Yes, that was an awesome opening.
That was one of my. I have to say the first Thor fight might be one of my favorites. Like the cinematic quality of the creating the frozen lightning was just so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then when you go to the crater, seeing another bolt of frozen lightning and unraveling that, the axe has done this before, and it was Faye, and
Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, not as good is a really good fight. The most challenging one though for me has got to be the triple berserker fight.
Oh, you mean the Berserker and the two sisters?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was a shit. I actually really didn't like that fight.
Yeah, I got
I
frustrated
found
on that one.
the only thing that said it okay was that the sisters shared a health pool.
Yeah.
And that made that like balanced it a little bit, but the Berserker in that fight in particular is very aggressive. So if you focus on the sisters, you usually have him breathing down your neck the entire time.
Yeah, just jumping right on top of you. Yeah, it's tough. So what but what do you think about
forgot
the
to mention
go ahead, go ahead.
the giant when you're in Jotunheim
Oh,
in the Agrabota section.
Angraboda's grandma. Yeah, that's a really
Yes.
that was a
that
really
was a super fun fight.
unique fight. Yeah.
Really cool puzzle.
Yeah, I like that one. That was a good. You're right. That one.
It was a good ending to a section that had just started to stretch a little too long.
Yeah, it's too long. That one was too
Yeah.
long. That's I will be a little bit more critical of it. That
Especially
section was
because I
too
can't.
long.
When you come back, the only thing you do there is talk to Agrabota, look at a couple things, and then grab a flower.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Jotunheim, comes back at the end game, yeah, you talk to Angerboda, get a flower, and you can pet Fenrir, and that's it.
Yeah, and I absolutely
A little
pet
bit
the
of a
boy.
bummer.
Oh yeah.
Of course, give him scritches.
Oh, I will say Garm, another cool fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Garm fight.
It was a really cool way they handled a boss that is really large by keeping him far back, but using the chain.
Yeah.
So you had something to keep in your frame. It was something different that I think it's Needhog.
Needhog, yeah.
Yeah. That fight, a little bit of trouble because it was so quick sometimes that the camera wasn't necessarily like there was a lot of stuff out of frame.
The arena
the
arena is narrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
That arena is narrow, where the Garm one is I think better.
Yes. But overall, this Ragnarok in particular has a lot of good boss fights compared to 18. There's more of them.
Yes.
Yeah. The mini bosses
yes,
are
they
all
do
really
copy and
satisfying.
paste some of them, but like the Drekkies and the dragons and the drakes.
See, I really like the Drekkie and all the different dragons. Those were fun.
The dragons were super fun. I really enjoyed the dragon fights. My favorite cool new addition were the phantoms.
I was about to say the phantoms I really enjoyed.
Especially once you get the spear, because they're so much easier with the spear than any other weapon, because you can just embed them, wait for them to flash, and then do drop near's command.
Yeah.
Something like it, yeah. Those are all good. I found the Odin fight to be a little underwhelming.
Agreed.
Yep.
But that often is the case with the final boss. I mean, some cool animations.
It was cinematic enough. There was it was definitely not hard.
But you never want a final boss to really have a huge skill barrier, right? Because then people aren't going to finish the game. That sucks.
That's why games have moved to the hard bosses are optional. Millennia.
I do like that trend. I do like that trend for sure. Okay, so here's the big thing though. What did you guys make of the ending with Atreus going off on his own?
I thought that was deserved. I think he had enough character growth throughout that he couldn't be a sidekick anymore. He needed to be his own person, do by the way of the giants.
Yeah, I thought I liked it. I felt like it was a pretty solid end to his kind of 2-game character arc. Like him and his father
he's a big boy.
Yeah, have gotten their relationship to a good standing,
a healthy place.
Yeah, he's earned his respect. it's now
What,
his time.
you and your child don't normally have arguments that result in him turning into a bear and
It almost killing you. Yeah.
Oh, I did love that you got to do at least a little as the bear.
at least one bear fight.
Yeah. I enjoyed that one. But yeah, I really liked kind of how they wrapped up Atreus' story. And I do think, Matt, that it totally set it up for Sindri to be the potential next big bad. I thought that was pretty.
Sindri is probably the character I felt the most bad for.
Oh,
in the entire game.
absolutely.
A man who like absolutely lays it down on the line that he's been just like used and abused by them the entire way, like used for his abilities and, you know, like, oh, just use my house, bring in strangers.
Yeah.
Oh, the stranger you brought in happens to be the Allfather.
Who kills my brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes the last thing, the only thing that he like really holds any control over. You know,
I also don't think we can talk about Ragnarok without bringing up the forge. The forge
Right.
scene.
Mm,
right. That's a really good one.
Yes.
That's a really great
Because
scene.
that's one of those matured scenes where like the franchise has grown so much from where it was. Like the original games would never have a scene like that of Kratos and Brock consoling Brock in a way, you know.
yeah.
Even the blessing itself that Brock gives to the spear is
So,
is
very
something that,
sincere.
but it's something that the first game never would have done. The line that stuck with me, you know, is like, you know, like the may this weapon strike true, but may it be put down when its job is done. You know, like
Yes.
that's something that would never have occurred to the original
Yeah.
games. It's like, you know, but does serve to me as a bit of a disconnect for the larger series. And so I guess let's now move to our non-real kind of spoiler territory. This will be our mark for those of you coming back into the episode from skipping forward on our spoiler discussion. I have this kind of qualm with the series as a whole, with that its message of, you know, being better, and like it's the Kratos's desire to move away from his violent past and his over reliance upon violence and vengeance and all that. How does that land, and what are these games really saying about violence? If Kratos, you know, if Kratos is truly sick of the fighting, you know, the game is still all fighting, you know, and can this
And he
message
does
can it succeed in an action game format? You know,
he
can
does
that
bring up I believe it's it's Atreus who asks him, is it moral to kill people who are trying to kill you? Or
he
something
just says
along those
he
lines.
just says yes.
Yeah.
He all he does is say is yes.
And that's I believe
Yeah,
that's
Kratos is a confirmed Floridian. You know, it does a stand your ground.
the only
You know-
the only enemy in the game I ever felt bad for killing were the stupid little lizards
Yes.
that like would die in one arrow. It's like, what are you doing here? Like
I
go to your home.
So I have two things on that, Ben, and I do think it's a fair critique, but I think it's a larger critique of anything kind of this nature, whether like it's an anti-war film that is based in a war, like there is that disagreement between it. But I thought the Kratos realizing they were really killing it was the Midgardians who they're protecting.
Yeah, and holding up the fight.
Yeah, like I thought
Trying to
that-
spare Heimdall.
yeah, between trying to spare Heimdall, and then the decision to protect the Midgardians.
You have no idea how
So-
mad I was when he started that.
So it comes it is most successful in those kind of cutscene things where I think it really has some dissonance, is like in the I think it was somebody on one of the Escapist podcasts. It was probably Yahtzee. Shouts out to them. Who has said like his major complaint about these games is like, you know, they talk about it both in cutscenes and then even in the endless banter type of things like that. You know, we're trying to avoid violence and all this, and that's the major message. And then, you know, like you go and you're brutally killing all these things, and then you go back to talking as if nothing happened. You know, there's a bit of dissonance there that I don't love. that I wish that it was more reflective in those times, but I just don't think that works in this format, right? I don't think that
that's
I don't think you could get away from that problem with this format, because like, what are you just gonna not have combat? You know, people won't play the game.
that's I think kind of just part of what this game is, unfortunately, from that aspect. But yeah, I don't know how could you do that. I do think maybe some more, but they do some reflection, but yeah, it's not enough. They do just kind of move on after, slaughtering another 10 15 elves or whatever.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Draugr aren't people.
They're like animated corpses. But yeah, the elves are a perfect example. And like, he's like
they do kind of touch on the like the.
Well, he always is
not
talking about
wanting
he doesn't want to be involved in this, like, but they're making him involved and all this, and yeah, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't hit all the way. But
if you return to Alfheim,
I did,
and you go to the Temple of Light with Freya.
Yep.
There's a fun interaction where you walk by it and like he says something about it and he's like, "Don't touch it." And she's like, "I'm not an idiot. Why would I touch the light of Alfheim?" He's just like,
I've done it twice now. But so where it is successful, obviously, is in comparison to the earlier saga, to the earlier franchise, because like, since the first game, the series has long been accused of presenting a single-minded celebration of violence, misogyny, and sometimes the most incorrectly quoted toxic masculinity, I think.
Just because there are quick time events where you jump into bed with a harem. And
the orgy quick time event for health orbs. It grants you health orbs.
Amazing.
That's one of the ones that gets brought up a lot. But this one is a little bit, the original creator, David Jaffe, like, it's, I think, a good thing that he's not involved in this anymore. Although he does, in his defense, he is not responsible for the majority of the actual worst elements of the game, of those early games, the specific examples that I'll cite in a minute. But he did say, his early comments about, making the first game, he's like quoted as saying that he saw the game combating the trends that, at least in America, things have become so politically correct, that I was really jazzed about doing that was more a throwback to that more animalistic kind of brutal Conan the Barbarian kind of vibe. And this was in 2004.
Hilarious.
That he said
hilarious.
It was just ahead of the time.
Yeah, things were so
too
things
woke.
were so political. Yeah, cancel culture was definitely a thing under the Bush administration.
That's awesome.
We canceled a lot of Afghanistan citizens.
Oh yeah, we canceled them for sure. Yeah, the Iraqi population canceled.
I totally agree that I think that those are fair critiques of the original games, but I will say, having not played them, but just the general story beat, it doesn't reward Kratos, really. Like, it does still show him miserable and
he's unhappy, yeah. But like, that's I mean, but here's the point that I kind of was, where I said that I would make later when I was talking about my experience with the first game. He is an incredibly unlikable character in the beginning. He's not even like, really, they say like, oh, he's an anti-hero. I disagree with that assessment. He's just an asshole. He is like not doing.
Is it in the first game where he just rips Icarus's wings off for just being in his way?
No, that's another. I think that's a later game.
I think that's the second game.
Yeah, but it's like he does all sorts of stupid, like in the first boss fight, like when you kill the Hydra, you climb inside its mouth to get the key, and like it's like need the captain's key, and he's like, "Oh, thank you for coming to save me." And it's just like, "I didn't come for you." Takes the key and kicks him in the face and sends him hurtling down into its gullet. It's just like, what good did that do? What purpose did that serve? It's just like, he's an incredibly unlikable figure. And I mean, the story and like his presence in the story is incredibly thin. He's got very few actual voice lines. Like, the actual characterization is not strong in those first games. But then, the actual things that get talked about a lot are, the orgy quick time event. In God of War 3, Kratos, saves a half-naked princess in Poseidon's chamber and then proceeds to kill her in order to hold up a crank that opens a door, like to use her
Yes.
dead body as a
Jesus
puzzle for a
Christ.
puzzle.
Yes.
The trophy, this is the one that always gets talked about. In Ascension, there is a trophy titled Bros Before Hoes that you get for curb stomping a female enemy.
Oh God.
And so like David Jaffe when like brought up, because so this was all mentioned in a 2020 Inverse piece that like that Jaffe did not take too kindly for, but he like when people brought that shit up, he's like, yeah, I didn't work on those games. Like it's like I wasn't there for that. Into the Balrog's defense as well, he did not work on those games either. He worked on like God of War 3, I think, for the first like 8 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did not see that game through. He directed he worked on the first one. He was like the lead animator on the first one, and then directed directed the second one, obviously directed God of War 2018, and was a creative head on Ragnarok.
See, the big mistake they made was they didn't do what Dante's Inferno did with the formula, where they made the character really likable, and then they made everything the character's done extremely unlikable. And then the everything's just titties out.
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty. There are plenty of titties out in the original one. Satan hangs dong. Awesome.
Amazing.
Full dong Satan.
Incredible. We love it. We love it when Satan hangs dong.
Demon
They
dong.
do it as a purposeful moment when Dante's because he's chasing Beatrice. It's literally following Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Very vaguely, but he's chasing Beatrice down through the depths of hell, and Satan comes out with his massive hanging dong. He's like, "Oh, look, my new bride."
Okay, so all this, the changes then that were made in 2018 led to many in my opinion, pretty tired kind of think piece being written about, Kratos has matured and he's struggling with single fatherhood. He's been, tempered by the passing of years. But, where it does become interesting is, he's still struggling to come to terms with his own humanity, which is fully exemplified by the stilted relationship with Atreus at the beginning. And like the real course of these, at least I guess you could say probably more in 2018 and in some ways Ragnarok, but it's really the story is about Kratos teaching Atreus how to be a god and Atreus teaching Kratos how to be human.
How to be human.
Yeah.
And then you get the fun in Ragnarok interactions between like Thor and Loki, where it's like, oh yeah, what would I know about being like a half god, half giant
with an overbearing father? And
like
nothing
at all.
Nothing unique there. So you again correctly identified this previously, Matt, that the main theme of the Ragnarok things is coming to terms with the series past. It is explicitly making a statement about where the series was and where it is now. The whole mantra of we must be better. And so I think it's rightly so that this is a meta commentary by the creators on the series. There are 2 points in Ragnarok that I want to bring up that really exemplified this. And Andrew, you did kind of mention one of them, but I've got a quote here about it. But so the first one is where it's like after you fight Garm and it slows down, it comes to a stop really, but it's like one of those really kind of slow moments that is actually really earned and really affecting. It's they're about to travel through the portal and Kratos, goes and sits down. They're in Niflheim and, Kratos is talking about struggling
Helheim.
with, oh, you're right. They're in Helheim. I get confused because they're both like kind of blue and cold.
Frosty.
Yeah. They're in Helheim. Kratos is talking about, struggling with falling back into his old ways. He's angry, distrustful. And they have this heart to heart that is really nice. And Kratos apologizes, which, is a definitely, not something that the earlier, toxic masculinity of Kratos could ever do before. And Atreus brings back the, don't be sorry, be better. He brings back the message that Kratos has been giving him the whole time. Then you get the bit at the very end in the final, the lead up to the final battle in the Ragnarok section that you talked about, Andrew, about the witnessing the death of these myth guardians who had been tricked by Odin to
be
put themselves in
cannon
risk
fodder.
and to put themselves in the way of say of the invaders. And so this is then becomes the main theme of Ragnarok, where it then itself is the culmination of, and there's the dissonance then that was internal and purposeful in 2018, where Kratos is saying we must be better, but you must close yourself off to these things, where he he admits that he was wrong to tell Atreus to close his heart to the pain and struggles of others. He says, you feel their pain because that is who you are, and you must never sacrifice that, not for anyone. I was wrong. Open your heart to their suffering. Today we will be better.
Yeah, that for me was like the scene. Like I thought that was it.
I haven't had a better scene get me more amped to stomp an Allfather.
Because again, like I mentioned this too, it's like he then goes to say, like, because it had come from just at the beginning of that chapter to now, it's like they're saying, like, we're out for vengeance. That's the same old Kratos.
Yep.
That is the same old Kratos. Is he's motivated by anger, by vengeance,
right?
By something
hatred.
He lectures Mimir on in the Berserker fights.
Right.
The more Berserkers you defeat, the more Mimir is, taking gratitude out of it. He's like, is this really for justice, or is this for vengeance? And then when you defeat King Hrolf, the final back and forth, where he talks about how he's going to use the sword for, doing better with it and
to do good things, write a new history for it.
And, Mimir brings up, he's like, you've changed. He's like, I've had a good advisor. That was another one of those
moments that were good. Yeah. And it's the changing that, we're no longer doing this for vengeance, but for justice is an important thing. But then they say, like, oh, but like, you go and do it alone. That's a suicide mission. Is basically just like, that's sometimes what, say justice requires is a willingness to die.
Yeah.
Is a
big thing from Freyr, which was
a
good character moment for him, because I found Freyr very unlikable up until that point.
Yeah, he's a little too quippy, a little annoying. I mean, when he's drugged and fucked up, that scene was pretty funny. But like, yeah, he's like,
that one just kept going. I kept waiting for it to stop so I could walk over to the table, and he just kept rambling.
All right, so I'm getting a notification here that my internet is being weird. So let's try to wrap this up quickly. This is the last thing I had about this, is the getting our opinions and basically kind of laughing at the controversies that surrounded Ragnarok up until its release. So we had the racist backlash against the casting of a young black actress to play Loki's love interest, Angrboda. People complaining about the lack of mythic authenticity, really showing their asses.
She's a really fun character and doesn't like detract from the story.
Performance is great. The actress does a really good job. But so then we get these things here. Brock talks like a foul-mouthed Texas prospector. Mimir is Scottish and is tied directly to English folklore. There are theories that he's basically supposed to be Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream. And in Ragnarok, he straight up references Macbeth.
Yep.
Loki is a quarter Greek demigod. You don't see people complaining about that. And then there's we joked about it, but all the deviations from Greek myth. No, that also the stupid backlash to Fat Thor. It's like, people are like, oh, like, Angrboda is not mythically accurate. Thor is mythically accurate, and I don't like it. No, people who like complain about that are absolutely stupid. The one thing, it's like that maybe the material, the marketing material didn't do it as justice. It's like you're thinking like, oh, he just looks like a regular fat guy type of thing, but he's huge.
He's enormous.
He towers over everybody. He's enormous. The sheer scale of him, is enormous. So people are like, oh, like looks like he doesn't have pectorals. He's got man boobs or whatever. And I'm just like, fuck you.
Especially because a lot of your strongman competition competitors definitely don't have girth and man boobs.
They literally look like Thor.
They don't have the power gut, like
go look up the guy who played the Mountain. What does he look like? the fucking Thor character model.
Also, the whole drunk Thor rambling bar fight that you do in the tavern.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a
fantastic.
fun little bit.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, and then so yeah, you have just then in general like that you'd get to responses about all of this stuff. The change. This is just goes to the Norse saga, not specifically about Ragnarok, but you get the classic right wing dullards, who make the usual argument that writers have ruined the franchise by making the game political, by doing all these changes, making all these these statements, having this meta commentary of being better type of thing. The narrative director,
you're on the wrong side of anything when the term "be better" makes you mad.
Yeah, when the idea of like caring for others and self-improvement is not a good one, apparently.
Yeah. But Ragnarok's narrative director Matt Sophos just puts it exactly correctly himself. It's like he's responding to complaints. Oh, you made it political. He says, as a writer, your job is to tell stories that are compelling and relatable. You bring pieces of yourself to stories and your opinions shine through. So writing is always political. It's just usually only called that if the politics aren't agreed with.
100%.
No, the real politics in this is that people with goatees are assholes and people with full beards are wise sage fathers.
Yes, as I stroke my full beard here. Yeah.
Kratos is actually a commentary on our Vietnam veterans who were used to propagate the state.
People don't know
had their backs turned on them.
The original Greek saga, his name isn't actually Kratos, it's Kyle.
All right, so that was our first deep dive into a game series. I had a good time. I look forward to a little bit, but I look forward to doing more of these. Any final
Not all
thoughts
of them
before
will be this fun.
Yeah, but any next month I'm gonna be putting on my hater hat. I'm just going to become the number one player hater of all time. But that should in itself be kind of fun. So any final thoughts before we sign off?
I got most of my thoughts out there. I mean, I have a real appreciation for these games. I think they do a really great job, especially the new ones in particular, obviously, do a great job with the emotional narrative and making you not only care, but I do, to your point, Ben, these things are very easily relatable and you can understand the characters' motivations and kind of feel them. And I don't think that's always present in some of our best video game titles. So I just have a lot of love for this series. Thought it was great all around. Really appreciate how they wrapped it all up.
I think you covered it pretty well, from my end at least. Basically, just think of it from the perspective of it takes a lot to invest me into side content that is purely for fluff and narrative. But to go and do the Viking funeral at the end and just kind of sit there and kind of soak in, what is really the end of the game more than anything else is they do another credit roll there.
Yeah, they do a real credit roll. Yeah. Yeah. My one thing is that despite the narrative dissonance that I brought up about, the focus on combat is how it maybe conflicts with the overall message of the game. The combat is fucking god tier, right? Not to put too much of a cap on it, but it is. I mean, it shows and it shines through that the game director for Ragnarok was the old combat lead. Really well done, well thought out. It took the base that they did in 2018, expanded on it in great ways. There was so much there. I mean, I really found myself really starting to fully understand and really being able to get kind of playful with the different combat stuff and to make my own challenges out of things, to use, the right elemental affinities to keep combos going, use runic attacks to do some cool shit. But there was still it's almost at the end, I felt like I barely scratched the surface. But there's a lot
Like I
there,
said,
but it didn't feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
So that's
the
impressive. So cheers to them.
The second I started min-maxing in that game, like the amount of possibilities of combat style is just insane.
Yeah. So yeah, really well done. Great effort. I want definitely, top 2 games of last year. So we will, if there's another entry into the franchise, maybe we'll revisit it. But this was a good first go at
I
one of
can't
these types of
imagine we're going to
episodes.
see another entry in the franchise for at least a couple years.
Yeah,
if that.
for a while. But till then, you can follow us at Twitch at twitch.tv/campaign comrades. Follow us on Twitter at CampCompod, and stay tuned. Next week we will be doing our review of the news from the month of January, and stay tuned for more exciting things coming after that. We love you very much. Thank you for listening, and good night and good gaming wherever you are.